12 states that can't survive another recession. If the U.S. economy slipped tomorrow, 12 states would feel it first, and some might not make it out unchanged. Reports from Moody's Analytics and National Business Capital already flag Louisiana, Colorado, and Mississippi as the least prepared. Most have rainy day funds below 3% of their budgets, far under what economists call safe. Behind the numbers are real people, families stretched by debt, small towns depending on one fading industry, workers who can't afford another hit. A new recession would expose everything the last boom hid. But collapse isn't destiny. Some of these same states are quietly building lifelines. Clean energy jobs, tech corridors, new ports, new hope. So tonight, we're not just naming the 12 most fragile states. We're asking a bigger question. What does it take for a state to survive when the next storm hits? Let's start with the one experts call the weakest link, Louisiana. Louisiana is ranked the most vulnerable state in America if a recession hits. It's not just the numbers, it's the structure. Unemployment remains higher than the national average, and the state's rainy day fund could only cover a few days of operations. That means if tax revenue drops, services stop almost instantly. The economy depends on a narrow set of industries: oil, gas, tourism, and shipping. When global demand falls or travelers stay home, Louisiana feels it before anyone else. The last major downturn wiped out thousands of energy jobs and took years to replace them. Small towns never fully bounced back. Poverty rates are among the highest in the nation, and more than 1 in 5 children live below the poverty line. For many families, a single missed paycheck could trigger crisis. Still, Louisiana has leverage few states can match. The port of South Louisiana is one of the busiest in the world, and new investments in offshore wind and green energy could bring stability where oil once dominated. Billions in federal funds are being directed to coastal restoration, projects that create jobs and protect infrastructure from floods and hurricanes. If those efforts expand, the state can turn its vulnerability into resilience. Louisiana has seen collapse before, from hurricanes, oil spills, and recessions. Yet it always rebuilds. That same persistence might be the key to surviving the next one. Mississippi, stretched thin. Mississippi stands near the bottom in household income and state savings. The average family earns just over $52,000 a year, while the national median is nearly $75,000. Many depend on federal assistance and local programs to cover essentials. If another recession hits, those programs face cuts at the very moment people need them most. That's the trap. Low income, low savings, high dependence. Mississippi's economy is heavily tied to manufacturing, agriculture, and public employment. When consumer demand dips, factory shifts slow, and farm exports decline. The 2008 crisis hit the state hard, and recovery took longer than almost anywhere else. Yet, there's quiet momentum building. Canton and Blue Springs are attracting massive automotive investments. Nissan, Toyota, and suppliers linked to Ford's Blue Oval City in neighboring Tennessee. Those projects mean new infrastructure, new jobs, and better logistics links. The federal government is also investing in broadband expansion, connecting rural counties that were isolated for decades. That's economic oxygen. If the state keeps building beyond the old model, diversifying, modernizing, and training its workforce, it could soften the blow of the next downturn. Mississippi has always been labeled poor but proud. The pride still holds. Now the goal is to make the economy match the resilience of its people. South Carolina has been booming for years. Manufacturing, tourism, tech startups, retirees flooding in. But booms built on migration and tourism are the first to crack when money tightens. The state's economy is deeply tied to consumer confidence. When people stop traveling, buying cars, or building new homes, South Carolina feels the chill immediately. Charleston's port is busy, but it depends heavily on global trade, the same system that slows down in every major recession. And because housing prices climbed fast, many new residents carry high mortgage debt. If interest rates stay high or layoffs hit, defaults could rise sharply. Local budgets are already thin. Many counties rely on property taxes to fund schools and emergency services. A drop in values could mean deep cuts right when people need support. But South Carolina's advantage is its momentum. BMW, Boeing, and Volvo keep investing in production here, and the shift toward electric vehicles could secure long-term stability. Colleges and tech incubators in Greenville and Columbia are building new industries that don't depend on tourism or real estate bubbles. The real test is whether the state can balance growth with caution. South Carolina rose fast after the last downturn. Now it needs to prove it can stand strong when the next one comes. Colorado. Colorado looks rich from the outside. Booming cities, strong wages, low unemployment. But much of that prosperity rests on fragile ground. The state's housing costs have skyrocketed, leaving even middle-income families stretched thin. During a recession, that pressure flips fast. When layoffs begin, high costs turn comfort into crisis. Colorado's revenue system also depends heavily on income and sales taxes. Both drop sharply when spending slows. And unlike many states, Colorado's budget rules limit how quickly it can respond to economic shocks. The taxpayer's Bill of Rights restricts government spending growth, which means fewer options for emergency relief when the economy crashes. In the 2020 pandemic downturn, that rule forced sudden cuts to education and local programs, even while reserves sat untouched. Still, Colorado isn't without tools. The state's renewable energy and tech sectors continue to attract federal and private investment. Boulder and Denver lead in green startups and research jobs that stay steadier in recessions. And its population, young, educated, innovative, helps it bounce back faster than most. The challenge is keeping that balance. High growth without pricing out the very workers who make it possible. Colorado can thrive again, but only if it learns from how close it came to breaking last time. Nevada. Nevada's economy glows bright when times are good, and dims almost instantly when they're not. More than half the state's GDP depends on tourism, entertainment, and hospitality, the very industries that collapse first in a recession. Las Vegas alone brings in over 40 million visitors a year, but when consumer confidence drops, those visitors vanish overnight. In 2020, Nevada's unemployment rate hit 30%, the highest in the country. That kind of collapse doesn't just shake jobs. It erases small businesses, tips local housing markets, and drains state budgets in months. And while the recovery looks strong, much of it relied on short-term spending and stimulus. Outside Vegas, rural counties still struggle with weak infrastructure and limited job diversity. Nevada also ranks among the lowest in education funding, leaving its workforce less adaptable when industries shift. But there's a quiet transformation underway. Massive investments in lithium mining, EV battery plants, and renewable energy are turning the desert into an industrial frontier. Tesla's gigafactory near Reno sparked a chain reaction of suppliers, data centers, and solar projects. If that momentum continues, it could give Nevada the one thing it's always lacked: stability beyond tourism. For a state built on risk, resilience might just become its biggest jackpot yet. New Mexico. New Mexico sits on a paradox: rich in resources, poor in results. The state is home to vast oil reserves, a booming film industry, and high-tech labs like Los Alamos and Sandia. Yet, nearly 20% of residents live in poverty, one of the highest rates in the nation. A single downturn in oil prices can send shockwaves through the entire economy, slashing state revenues and shrinking school and health budgets overnight. During the last oil slump, New Mexico lost thousands of jobs and ran deficits that took years to refill. And while federal spending keeps its science and defense sectors afloat, that dependence is a double-edged sword. One budget cut in Washington can ripple through the whole state. Still, the state's future isn't hopeless. Massive new investments in clean energy, film production, and aerospace are reshaping the job market. Netflix's expansion in Albuquerque and new solar fields across the southern desert are giving young workers alternatives to oil. If New Mexico can channel its federal money into education and infrastructure instead of patching short-term holes, it could finally escape the boom and bust trap. It's a slow climb, but the foundation is shifting. In a recession, New Mexico might stumble again, but it's learning how to land on its feet. West Virginia. West Virginia's story is one of deep roots and hard decline. For decades, coal powered both the state's economy and its identity. But that same dependence now leaves it dangerously exposed. Coal jobs have fallen by more than 60% since the 1990s, and every national slowdown speeds the drop. In a recession, energy demand dips, coal shipments fall, and tax revenue shrinks. Small towns built around a single mine or plant can lose half their income in a single quarter. The result is a chain reaction: closed schools, shrinking hospitals, and young people leaving for good. West Virginia's population has been falling for years, and its workforce is aging faster than almost anywhere in the U.S. That makes recovery even harder when recessions hit. But the state isn't standing still. Billions in federal infrastructure and energy transition funds are being directed here, retraining miners for new jobs in solar manufacturing, hydrogen, and advanced materials. Companies like Form Energy and Berkshire Hathaway are already investing in renewable plants. If West Virginia can build new industries without losing its identity, it can turn a century-old burden into a modern rebirth. Recessions hit hardest where economies stand still, and West Virginia is finally starting to move again. Alaska. Alaska is one of the most recession-prone states in America, not because of bad management, but because of its geography and dependency. Nearly 85% of the state's revenue comes from oil production. When oil prices fall, the entire budget collapses. Public services, schools, and even the annual dividend every resident receives all depend on that single volatile market. The 2014 oil crash forced layoffs, budget cuts, and an exodus of workers, and the recovery never fully restored balance. In a new recession, Alaska's cushion is thinner than ever. The state's permanent fund, once its great safety net, has been repeatedly tapped to fill deficits. And with costs of living among the highest in the nation, most families have little room for error, but Alaska still holds leverage that few others do. New investments in natural gas, critical minerals, and Arctic shipping routes could open an entirely new chapter of trade. The state also leads in renewable energy innovation, wind and hydro projects designed for remote, off-grid communities. If those plans scale, Alaska could finally break free from the boom and bust cycle of oil dependence. It's a risky road, but the frontier has never scared Alaskans. Every downturn has tested them, and every time, they've found a way through the cold. Arkansas. Arkansas is often overlooked, but its economy is fragile. Household income is below the national median, and nearly 16% of residents live in poverty. Many families depend on public assistance, and sudden economic shocks hit them first. State revenues are tied heavily to manufacturing, agriculture, and small-scale services. When demand drops, layoffs spread quickly, especially in rural counties. Healthcare and education funding are limited, leaving communities exposed. During the last recession, job losses in farming and manufacturing persisted for years, and many small towns never fully recovered. Yet Arkansas has quiet strengths. Walton and Tyson supply chains provide stability, and new investments in logistics, distribution centers, and tech startups are slowly diversifying the economy. Infrastructure improvements, including broadband expansion in rural areas, are helping more communities connect and compete. If the state can balance rural support with urban growth, it can soften the impact of the next downturn. Arkansas faces risk, but it also has pathways to resilience. Arizona. Arizona has grown rapidly in recent years, attracting retirees, tech workers, and new families. That growth, however, comes with high risk. Housing costs have soared, leaving many residents living paycheck to paycheck. Service jobs dominate in Phoenix and Tucson, and tourism drives income in other areas. When a recession hits, layoffs occur first in these sectors, and local economies slow immediately. High debt and mortgage payments make households less able to absorb shocks. The state's budget depends on income and sales taxes, which fall during downturns, limiting relief programs. Yet, Arizona also has areas of opportunity. Solar energy production is expanding, tech startups are growing in Phoenix and Tucson, and logistics hubs are connecting the state to the national supply chain. Investment in workforce training and industry diversification could protect residents and stabilize the economy. Arizona may feel the impact of a recession quickly, but its industries and population offer the tools to recover faster than other states. Illinois. Illinois has a strong economy on paper, but deep financial problems make it vulnerable in a recession. The state carries one of the highest debt loads in the country, and its pension obligations alone consume a large portion of the budget. When revenues drop, the state has little flexibility to respond, forcing cuts to services and education. Chicago dominates the economy, but rural areas rely on agriculture and manufacturing, which can stall quickly during downturns. Unemployment tends to rise faster in these regions, and recovery can lag for years. Still, Illinois has assets that can help stabilize it. The state hosts a diverse mix of industries, including finance, technology, and healthcare. Transportation hubs and ports along the Mississippi and Great Lakes keep commerce flowing, even when other sectors slow. If Illinois invests in workforce development, infrastructure, and fiscal reform, it could soften the impact of the next recession. The challenge is balancing long-term debt reduction with short-term economic support, but the tools exist to make it happen. Missouri. Missouri's economy is a mix of manufacturing, agriculture, and service industries, which makes it somewhat resilient, but also uneven. Rural counties heavily dependent on farming can struggle when commodity prices fall, while urban areas face layoffs in manufacturing and services during downturns. The state's budget has limited reserves, meaning recessions can trigger sudden cuts to education, healthcare, and local programs. Household incomes are slightly below the national median, leaving many residents with little cushion for economic shocks. Still, Missouri has opportunities to strengthen its economy. Investment in logistics, technology, and renewable energy is expanding in cities like St. Louis and Kansas City. Educational initiatives are helping train workers for high-demand jobs, diversifying the workforce beyond traditional industries. If these efforts continue, Missouri could weather future recessions more effectively than past ones. The key is balancing growth in cities with support for vulnerable rural communities. The 12 states we covered all face unique challenges, but each has paths to resilience. Louisiana and Mississippi struggle with high poverty and dependence on single industries. Yet, investments in ports, clean energy, and infrastructure show real potential for recovery. South Carolina and Arkansas must balance rapid growth with support for rural communities, ensuring no one is left behind when the economy slows. Colorado, Alaska, and Nevada have high-cost economies and dependence on energy or tourism, but innovation in renewable energy and technology provides a buffer against collapse. Arizona and Missouri face housing pressures and vulnerable workforces, but expanding tech, logistics, and training programs can soften the next downturn. Illinois and West Virginia carry large debts and aging infrastructures, yet workforce development and industrial diversification create hope. Even New Mexico, with its reliance on federal spending and energy, demonstrates that strategic investments can turn weakness into opportunity. For residents, knowledge is power. Understanding your state's economic strengths and vulnerabilities allows you to prepare personally and professionally. Emergency savings, skill diversification, and awareness of local industries can make the difference when times get tough. History shows that recessions hit hardest where preparation is weakest, but states and communities that invest in infrastructure, education, and economic diversification can mitigate the impact. Governments also play a crucial role. Maintaining rainy day funds, planning for volatility, and supporting emerging industries are essential. Policy decisions today can prevent collapse tomorrow, turning risk into opportunity. The 12 states we've explored prove that challenges are real, but they are not permanent. Resilience is built over time, not overnight. Every recession in U.S. history has been followed by recovery, adaptation, and growth. States that embrace change, diversify their economies, and invest in their people are the ones that will stand strongest. Residents who understand the risks and prepare themselves will navigate downturns more safely. The story of these 12 states is ultimately a story of potential. Vulnerability is not destiny. Collapse is not inevitable. With foresight, investment, and adaptation, these states can emerge stronger, smarter, and more prepared. The next recession will test them, but the same forces of innovation, community, and planning that saved them in the past can save them again. The lesson is clear. Risk exists, but so does hope. Awareness, preparation, and action are the tools to survive and thrive. For states and residents alike, resilience is the greatest asset of all. When the next storm hits, the strongest will be those who prepared, adapted, and embraced opportunity over stagnation. The future is uncertain, but vulnerability is not permanent. The next chapter can still be written, and these 12 states have the power to write it well. If you found this helpful, then give the video a like. It helps others see it too. Your support makes it possible to keep sharing insights on state economies and the future of the U.S. And if you want to stay informed on U.S. economies and trends, hit subscribe.